I'm Ryan Milliken from Hardway Performance, and you're listening to the Diesel Power Podcast.
I'm Demetri Miller with No Zone Diesel.
This is Anthony Reams from XDP.
Jaron Holder from Holderdown Performance.
I'm Corey Willis with PPEI.
I'm Drew with D&J Precision Machine.
I'm Pinky.
And you're listening to the Diesel Power Podcast.
Diesel Power Podcast.
And you're listening to the Diesel Power Podcast.
The one and only Diesel Power Podcast.
What is up, Diesel Nation? Another awesome episode for you guys today. We're going to be talking about a 6.7 Cummins build, where it started, where it's at, and if that's enough power. But before we get to it, we want to thank our sponsors for this episode, BD Diesel. They've got some really cool turbo kits, and we want to talk to you about BD's Rumblebee Single SXE Performance Street and Strip turbo kits. It's one of the most complete kits on the market. It uses BD's exclusive single-piece compact 90-degree compressor housing, which provides higher CFM with lower losses. You couple that with BD's Pulse T4 wastegate-ready exhaust manifold and the custom cold air intake with 8-inch velocity air stack, and what you get is one of the most efficient and best value kits on the market. Also comes with custom formed silicone coolant hoses and all the supported hardware that provide a stressless, quick installation with a quality OE look, fit, and finish. There's tons of power options available. Now, second, what helps with that as well is custom tuning. And PPEI has a complete list of tuning options for 5.9, 6.7 Cummins, all the Duramax engines, 6.7 Power Stroke. So what you get with PPEI is crisp, precise tuning. They've really done their homework, know the turbo kits that are out there on the market, the different upgrades. And so when you order, those tunes are based specifically for your truck. So these things almost go hand in hand. You get the turbo kit, extra air, performance, lower EGTs, combine it with PPEI's custom tuning, and you've got a home run kit. So right now we're going to get to the podcast. We're chatting with Chad. He's a big fan of the podcast. He's going to talk to us about his 4th gen truck and where it started, where he's taking it. Chad, you're live on the Diesel Power Podcast. Nice to have you on today.
Nice to be here. Thank you.
I know you've been a fan of the podcast for a while, and offered some awesome suggestions for us, and I know you're really passionate about diesel performance and trucks and making them perform how you want. So we just wanted to talk to you about the trucks you've had, ways you've modified them, the whole thing.
All right, man. Yeah, that sounds great. I'm a huge fan of the podcast. You know, Ryan Milliken was your first podcast interview, and you know, that's before you done that, I've never even heard of a podcast. Didn't know what one was. Now I absolutely love it.
I didn't know what a podcast was until we started doing them either. I was like, what's a podcast?
Oh, yeah, for sure. But it's a great, yeah, they're addictive. You know, I'm a field service technician, you know, so I instead of listening to the radio like a lot of guys do, you know, I listen to podcasts and get great information about diesel performance.
So what's really cool is being able to talk with tuners or engine builders, transmission builders, turbo companies, enthusiasts, people who love to race, just all the different sides of it, and being able to bring it together kind of into one place, and you get to see so many things that may not exist on, say, social media or on websites or things like that, and just have conversations with people.
Oh, yeah, that's great. I mean, some of the awesome content that you bring is something that the normal diesel enthusiast would never get. You know, you can't call and talk to Ryan Milliken or Corey Willis or, you know, some of these great tuners and great manufacturers are just so busy, you know, so you answer great questions that we all have.
Well, I know you're a big Cummins guy. What was the first diesel truck that you had?
Well, the first diesel truck I ever owned was a 2001 2500, had an automatics 47 RE, and what really got me into them, I've always been a huge truck fan, so straight out of high school I actually owned an RT Dakota. Put a little cam in it, you know, some headers, exhaust. I thought I had a nasty truck. And a real good friend of mine also owned a 2001 Cummins, you know, 2nd gen. And he had a industrial injection hot rod DP44 and a set of 100-horse injectors. And he done a Dodge Zilla swap where you take the HX40 compressor housing and, you know, slap it on the HX35. And from a dead stop, you know, my RT Dakota would walk away from that thing, you know, about 2 or 3 truck lengths. And then we decided, you know, let's run from a roll one night and see how that goes. We done a 60 roll, and man, that truck obliterated that Dakota. I mean, he pulled me like 2 or 3 truck lengths, put my headlights out in smoke, and I was hooked. I said, I've got to go buy one. I can't wait. So It was actually a truck that I had seen around town a couple of times. I knew the original owner of the truck, and him and his wife was having some issues, I reckon, and they ended up selling the truck. So I bought it from a dealership. I actually went to look at the truck and called my wife. I said, hey, you need to come up here. I'm signing some paperwork on my first diesel truck. So she come up. We brought it home. It was a completely stock truck when I bought it, other than it had a lift and said a 37-1350. So big old lift, big tires. But when I bought the truck, the lift pump was actually out of it. You know, this was around 2006. I was a year out of high school, you know, really just learning the industry. So we put a factory lift pump back on the truck, and the injection pump went out about a month later, where it had started the fuel, you know, it tore the diaphragm in the VP44. So yeah. I've got a Dodge Reman VP44 pump on it, and all the research started. So in 2006, Voss was out, but, you know, I was a younger adult and didn't have a whole lot of money. So I actually done a Bully Dog big line kit with a hot rod pump at the time. So we run 3/8 line, you know, from the tank to a Holly blue pump mounted on the frame rail, and then straight up to the VP44, well, straight up to the factory fuel filter. And that seemed to do okay for a while, but I was going through pumps really bad because they were rotary pump, and it would start leaking diesel fuel out of the leak hole. So I finally, you know, anteed up. Bought me a Fast 95 Platinum at the time with a single filter. You know, the VP trucks didn't need as much filtration as like a common rail does. So we get that done. I threw a set of 110 horse DDP injectors in it. I had my lift pump, you know, straightened up, keep my VP44 around, you know, get a good foundation going. I've done a Dodge dealer swap myself, where I've done an HX40 compressor on my stock HX35. And an Edge comp box with a hot unlock and a stealth wire tap, you know, on top of the pump. And man, It was rolling coal and turbo squalling. I thought I was it. Well, about 3 months after the injectors, I noticed I'd be rolling down the road about 55, 60 mile an hour and roll into the throttle, and I would get a shudder right next to my right foot. My torque converter started slipping. So I started doing some research, you know, and didn't have the money to pay for a real big budget transmission. So I found a local transmission shop here in Tennessee. The guys took really good care of me, and we put a triple disc converter in it, done a valve body, you know, modified valve body, deep pan, a good set of clutches. And, you know, that truck probably made 500 horsepower maybe at the time. And that at the time in my life, that was the most expensive one piece for a vehicle I'd ever bought. I paid $4,000.56 for that transmission.
You still remember the amount?
Yes, yeah. You hardly ever forget those transmission purchases. So we drove the truck for a while, and man, I was amazed how big the difference of transmission made. I had no idea how bad my transmission was slipping prior to, you know, having a performance transmission. You know, I could pull out now, and when the turbo spooled up, it was blowing the tires off through 2 or 3 gears. So that really got me. You know, at the time I was working for Old Dominion Freight Lines, working on the dock, and I was like, you know, I love this diesel performance stuff. I'd love to make diesel a career. So I went to work for a small mom-and-pop shop, had a small fleet, working on outside trucks, and I worked on everything, you know, Cats, Cummins, Detroit, whatever would come in the door. Got my SC Master Tech, and went to Peterbilt. You know, that's what you got to get your foot in the door at a dealership. So I worked for them for 3.5 years, and they were a strict 40-hour a week work week. So I had a good time to start doing some side work. So I worked on anything I could get. You know, on farmers with 7.3s that wouldn't start in the morning, and then the 6.0s, you know, started coming out of warranty, and I've done a lot of 6.0 work. You know, EGR deletes and injectors and oil coolers. And I've got a real good friend of mine that actually owns a diesel performance shop now. We started doing cab offs and studs. And I've done some Cummins work, but there wasn't a whole lot of Cummins, you know, just the standard repairs. You know, they seem like they do a lot better in your day-to-day, you know, non-modified. So fast forward a little bit, you know, I left Peterbilt and I come to work for Cummins, and I purchased the current truck that I own now. It's a 2011 2500. It's a SLT package, crew cab short bed, 4-wheel drive. It's got a 6.7 with a 68 RSE in it. And I met a really good friend. The truck was stock when I first bought it, completely stock, had like 42,000 miles on it. had a great friend of mine that had a couple of Cummins, multiple Cummins. He had a 2008 mega cab 6.7 truck, and it was deleted and all that stuff. He's like, man, you really need to get a tune on this truck. You need to get a tune on this truck. So, I run out and I got a Smarty. I done a S67 on the truck originally, and the truck ran great. It was, throttle response was, kind of unnear, but, it actually ran really good. And we started a build on his 2008 truck, and he come to me and, said, hey, the truck's got a fleece cheetah turbo on it, stock injectors, H&S tuning, and he said, I want to go big. I said, well, how big are we talking? He goes, well, I've got an injector number in mind, and, that's where we want to start with. And I said, okay, it's a weird spot to start on the build, but what do you got in mind? He said, I want to run a set of R4 industrial injection 250 horse injectors. I said, okay, you're going to have a turbo. And he goes, well, what would you do? And I said, what do you do with the truck? And he said, well, I still tow with it. I've got a lawnmower trailer and stuff. I want to daily drive the truck. That's what we want to do compounds in. So we called up Industrial. We ordered a S366 over an S480 compound kit. We put a 10 mil pump and the 250 horse injectors in it. So then, it's what we're going to do about tuning. And I said, well, I only recommend one guy, when it comes to Cummins. I know there's a lot of great ones out there, but I've got a good relationship with Ryan. I said, let's get Ryan to tune it. So we called down, talked to Cody, and tell him what we're doing. And, Cody said, that's great. We'll definitely be able to hook you up. And I said, hey, while I got you on the phone, when are you guys going to tune the 4th Gen 6.7? I've got a 2011 I'd love to get tuned. And he goes, as a matter of fact, we're doing a little bit of beta testing right now. He said, what configuration is your truck? I said, well, it's 2011 with a 60 RFE. And he said, I don't think Ryan's seen one yet. At least let me get with you. So the next phone call I get is actually from Ryan himself. And we're talking about Shane's truck a little bit, the one that we're going to fix to do the build on. And he said, man, I'd love to get your truck on the dyno. And I said, well, I'm actually coming down to Florida, on vacation in a couple of weeks. Could we do it then? And he goes, yeah. So he writes the tune for Shane's truck. And in the meantime, I go down to Florida, meet Mr. Milliken himself when he was still at his old shop. And this was 2014, so Mini Week was still, brand new. And put the truck on the dyno. Ryan picked up like 90-something horsepower and 100 foot-pounds of torque to the wheels, just switching from Smarty to EFI. And that was on a, stock fuel, stock turbocharged truck. And, I was happy with the truck at the time, but Ryan took me for a ride in his beautiful mega cab with his compounds on it, and I was like, that's what I want, man. I want some more power. This thing is amazing. So we sat down and started talking a little bit. He said, well, the biggest thing right now is air. He said, you got tons of fuel. You're air limited at 471 to the wheels. So we start talking about what we're going to do with the turbos, and he said, you ought to be able to make about 525, 550 with a turbo. So, I work for Cummins. I deal with VGT turbos all the time and actuators, and, my truck doesn't get drove very much, so it's not a great candidate for a VGT. I've experienced a lot of VGT nozzles sticking and stuff where the trucks don't get used. The truck gets drove quite a bit. The VGT stays free and it's okay, but mine wasn't that case. So I decided to do a second gen swap from Fleece. We run a S463 with a 83 turbine, 0.90 AR. And that was the first thing. Well, I put a set of 425 or the 2000 series ARP subs in the truck, and it ran amazing. I've got all my fuel cleaned up. Originally with the stock turbo with the tuning, I would get on top of the charger a little bit and run out of air, and the truck would start smoking again. And Ryan's known for good clean tunes. So with the new air, it was amazing. A real small, haze, and the truck just ripped. I like compounds a lot, but the second gen swaps with a bigger single, just that hit that you get, it's a little bit of lag, and then it just comes on like a light switch. There's nothing that feels like that to me.
Well, we're on the topic of turbos. BD's Cobra Kits are really sweet. So they fit the 2003, 2012, 5, 9, 6, 7 Cummins engines. And the BD engineers have designed and tested each of them to 800, 1,000, 1,200, even 1,400 flywheel horsepower. So these Cobra twin turbo kits, they maximize power and efficiency, which is what you want in a twin turbo kit. So they use Borg-Warner's SXE turbos, and they're matched to provide a wide range of air needed for use on the street, at the strip, tons of different applications. Now, the Cobra Kit includes everything you need for bolt-on next-level performance. It's a compact, clean, space-optimized design, so it keeps your air conditioning, both batteries, and shock tower in their stock positions. The kit includes BD's wastegate-ready exhaust manifold, exclusive cast-divided T6 hot pipe turbo connection that improves turbo response and the top-end airflow of the system. And you also get the Cobra Head 5-inch closed radius turbo exhaust outlet casting. And the air filter comes with this 5-inch Velocity BD air filter kit, which has the air filter shroud and all the necessary hardware to make a complete, no fabrication required install kit, which is really cool for those guys who are looking for, compound twin turbo kit. But Chad, I wanted to ask you more about, you've got the truck at this level. What was your next step, or what was the next set of upgrades that you wanted to do?
I wanted to do a little bit more fuel because the truck, being an S400 Charger, there was that transient area where it wasn't really under boost yet, and it kind of lagged just a. So talked around again. He said, "Man, let's put some 45% S&S nozzles on the truck with a stock pump. I can give you a good tune, and that'll take care of a lot of that lag." And he was right, man. The truck is a ripper now. So I had a stock transmission, and I knew I could kill it at any point, so I was babying the truck as much as I could. Well, in the meantime, we start finishing up on my buddy Shane's truck, and we get it all done with the 66 and the 80, and we take it out on the test drive, and it had a built 68 RSE in it, and 3 licks on the new build, and the transmission let go. It started slipping in 4th gear, logged a fault code, wouldn't go to 4th gear again. So we're stuck in 3rd gear, trying to limp it home. So we started doing some research, with the power that the truck made, we knew we was going to have to do a 47 swap on that truck if we was ever going to be able to beat on it. So we load the truck up, tow it to Firepunk, and I got to meet Rick and LeVon and Paul Cato and all those guys. Well, Shane did. I talked to Paul quite a bit over the phone. And they hooked him up with a Stage 3, Golden Nugget Comp 47 with an anteater controller. They threw it on the dyno when they was down there, and the 6.7 trucks move so much air that the S300 Charger, the drive pressure was just insane. It'd come up under boost, and it would make about 70, almost 80 pounds of boost, and the drive pressure was about 1 to 1, and then all of a sudden the drive pressure would just take off and peg a 100-pound drive pressure gauge, and boost would slack off about 15, 20 pounds. And LeVon, told us, and then Ryan reviewed the data log, and he said, it's just bottlenecking. If you're going to make any more power, we're going to get some more air out. So we bring the truck back home. We go back to the drawing board. Okay, we didn't have the proper turbo set up. We got tons of fuel. What do you want to do? And we originally decided maybe let's try to put a gate in the system. Let's gate the 66 off to the hot pipe on the 80 to try to drive that big Charger harder and to get some of the exhaust flow off the engine so we're not bottlenecking anymore. And so we bought a manifold, we bought the gate, and the fitment wasn't right. So the 66 had a Mormon flange where the kit that we bought was designed for an HX40 flange. So the company we bought it from was actually ATS, and they were great over the phone, helped us out, explained what all we needed to do, and we decided, instead of trying to change flanges on our turbos and everything, I think we're just going to go with a bigger set. So we sent it back to them. They were more than welcome, just a small restocking fee and shipping, and so they helped us out. And so we decided to go with a Firepunk side-by-side kit on the truck. So now the truck currently has a S4 67.7 on the manifold and a S4 84 as an atmospherical. So, Shane calls me again. He goes, well, we got all this air now. How much power can the truck make? And I said, well, now you're actually fuel limited. So, what do you want? And he goes, well, I definitely want to use the full potential of those turbos. And I said, well, Ryan's had a truck on the dyno with that turbo set that done about 1250. So he's like, well, let's put some fuel on it. So we ordered a set of 300% extra G injectors, and we added dual fuelers. So we've got a stock LBZ pump on top of our 10 mil Cummins pump now. He took the truck down to Ryan not too long ago, and on CSP1, with really low duration, the truck did like 800 and something at 3/4 throttle. And, Ryan being the great guy that he is, he said, hey, man, this truck on a stock bottom end is not going to like if we go wide open throttle on CSP5. So they put together a game plan, and from what I understand, Freedom Racing Engines is going to build him a Comp 6.4 and hopefully it'll be going in sometime this winter. He's going to take it back down to take it back down to Hardway and have them guys do the engine swap and let Ryan do all the tuning and everything while the truck's down there. And we got our fingers crossed it's going to do 1250.
That's what's so awesome about Diesel Performance is just like the story there. Like it's so hard, say when you have a stock transmission in your truck, and then you have this extra power, and usually it's necessity that forces having to upgrade, like your 47RE or 68 or those sorts of things. But then once you have it, and you're able to feel the difference, especially in the converter, just how much power is being wasted and the drivability, it's like, okay, now I understand why these are so cool, or why people love them and are so passionate about transmissions. And then you go to the next step, and it's about, well, what about the air and the fuel and the way those all work together? And it's just like each step of Diesel Performance has its own particular high to it and excitement. And even that engine build, at the very end, it's going to be a whole different animal after the engine build. And it all comes back together with the tuning and the air and the fuel.
We can't wait, to see how this truck does, when we can actually use everything. I mean, at 800 horsepower, you can be rolling down the road right now at 60 mile an hour. It's a dually. We actually put 17 by 10s with big wheel spacers in the back, and he runs a 315 tire, so he's got 4 315s in the rear. 60 mile an hour rolling burnouts all day long. That truck is nasty, and we're not even using all the potential right now. So I get a little bit back to my transmission. So, the transmission that came out of that truck was under warranty, and we sent it back to the guys that built the transmission. They sent the unit back, and Shane made me an amazing deal on that transmission. So I purchased transmission from him, went back down to Hardway the following summer with the transmission in the bed, and had Ryan and the boys down there install the transmission. Ryan took me over and let me tour Suncoast. Man, their facility is amazing. All the CNC machines and the people there, they're awesome. Brought the truck back, put it on the dyno, and she did 1324 of the wheels and about 650 horsepower. And the truck is it's a runner. So I've had this deal here lately where I've been thinking about upping the power a little bit more. I'm still a stock bottom end 6.7, so I'll probably push it to about 800 horsepower. But I'm on the fence on what to do with transmission. The 68s it's amazing the way it tows. That 6th gear, and it tows amazing. But if I want to make any more than where I'm at right now, that 650 and 1,300 foot-pounds, I'm going to have to possibly go to a 47 or a 48 swap, and I'm on the fence on what to do with that currently.
That's the great question that any of us with a 6.7 that up the power, we always get to that point where we got to decide, go one direction or the other, and it can be really tough because the 68 RFE technology's come a long way since mid 2007, early 2008. But those 4 speeds when they're built and they're dialed in, it's just this feeling you have where that this transmission's more capable than the engine is, and you can beat the heck out of it, and it's still going to take it, and it's still going to like it, and you don't have to worry about it.
Yeah.
But it does get complex too. Is it? Well,
it's hard.
It's not really complex, say on the 3rd gens or like your year range of 4th gen, but I know on like the 13 to 17s there's some electrical things that the guys are still working through, but it's not that bad of a swap.
Yeah, and then money. Overall. They're expensive to buy the transmissions and swap the flywheel. And I've done all my research. I know about what it's going to cost, but this is 650 horsepower on the street. I don't drag race a truck. I've got kids, and my wife, she'd kill me if I'd have started to take my 2011 $40,000 truck down the drag strip and beat on it. So I may end up staying where I'm at, and then again we may go up a little bit more. I've got tons of great buddies, around the area where we live. Diesel Performance is life to a lot of us guys, and we've got some guys that drag race. I've got another good friend of mine that has a 72 100% a 10 mil on a G56 truck, and man, that truck is nasty. That's what the build that I was thinking about was stepping up to a 72 and some bigger injectors and maybe a 12 mil. I like the idea of the new 12 mil pumps. Keep it simple under the hood instead of dual fuelers. Dual fuelers are nice, but they're sometimes it kind of gets crowded in the engine bay.
It seems like that 650, 700 horse range. It's fun. It's a fun daily driver. You can still pull with it. It's a reliable setup. But we've talked about on the podcast, with other guests, how you can just get accustomed to it and almost a little bored with the power level, and then like 650, 700 is now 8, then 8's now 9, then now 9's 1100, and it's always this balancing act between, are you bored with power, you like the power, or do you need a second vehicle to go, race or do all these things? And I've always been fascinated by that side of the diesel market in the performance aspect. It's so cool to push these trucks to the level that they're at and keep them reliable, have fun. But if you want an all-out race truck, like the guys that do UCC and the other things, can do that too.
Oh yeah, that's kind of where my wife and I've been talking. It's a really beautiful truck. It's got 20-inch wheels, and the interior's really nice. The new fourth gen trucks, they've done such a good job on the new fourth gens. We may just leave it at 650 where it still tows. I've got an 8,400-pound camper that I towed to Florida. It's 10.5 hours away from us to go down to Ryan's place, and I towed it down there 3 times now, and the truck still gets like 13 miles a gallon pulling. I get like 22, without anything behind. Though this made a trip to Charlotte last week in the truck. So we may leave it where it's at and look for a single cab, long bed 06, 07, 59, and just make a nasty, drag truck or street monster,
That's what I love all diesel trucks, and I can appreciate the engineering that goes into them, and what companies have pushed different platforms like 6.7 Power Stroke or the Duramax platform. But when looking at that race aspect, it's so hard to beat those 5.9 common rails, what they can do, all the parts that are available for them, all the envelopes that have been pushed and the barriers that have been broken, and where things are at right now. It's so hard to not pick that as a platform to build as a weekend race truck, something you take to events, have fun with.
Oh yeah, and the common rail fuel system, man. I'm a huge Cummins fan. Every aspect of the Bs that we've ever had. The VPs and the 12 valves and the VP truck. 24 valves, and then it comes to common rail, and it's a game changer. I mean, the 12 valves are amazing, but when you got a real high horsepower 12 valve, some of the drivability is sacrificed, and there's a lot of guys done a lot of things. We just built a 12 valve not too long ago and put AFC Live on it, and that setup's amazing. You can now have a high horsepower 12 valve and turn down, some of your fuel and be able to tow with the truck, and then you flip a switch and you got it all. I mean, it's almost like having a common rail, but the common rails just drive so much nicer with big injectors and big pumps and bigger turbochargers with tuning. These amazing tuners out there can make these trucks drive like you wouldn't believe. A 1,000 horsepower truck, until you really get on it, you can't tell the difference if the setup's right. And that's one of my favorite things about common rail fuel systems. They are amazing.
And they keep advancing, across all the engine platforms. Is, 300 horsepower motor or something that made 550 foot-pounds of torque, or even going back to like 12 valves and that time range. But where they're at now, and the torque wars and the horsepower wars and what the manufacturers are doing and how efficient they make the systems, and just it's progressed so far. It seems like in a short amount of time. What kind of truck you can buy, how much power it'll make, the transmissions that are in them, the creature comforts, the payload capacities. It's just a really exciting time as a diesel enthusiast with what's being built and how it can be modified.
That is. I've been a Diesel Performance Diesel Performance magazine subscriber since 2005, and I've got every single magazine since I first subscribed to them, and it is amazing. Every now and then I've got a tote just full of these magazines, and every now and then I'll go back, and go back to some of the old magazines, and your big bad twin turbo 12 valve trucks were just it back in the day, and then DT trucks, they had their limits, and their pumps and stuff, but when the common rails start coming out and DPC starts and Ryan takes buckwheat up there and, does really good, and then you got Dimitri and his Duramax, and then LeVon, 2-time DPC winner, that's just, you can tell the common rails have really, really come a long way, and it's going to be hard for any other platform to keep up with them, I feel.
Oh yeah, I mean, I got hooked very similar to you. I had a truck. I had it was an 04 Dodge Hemi 1500, and I thought it was the greatest thing ever, right? And then one of my buddies gets a 6-liter Power Stroke and throws an SCT tuner on it, some other stuff, and I'm like, I just got destroyed by a crew cab long bed lifted 6-liter, and I didn't quite I appreciated it, but when I really got hooked was I saw Dimitri race his red truck at Truck Fest here, maybe 2007, 2008. And just watching it stage and go down the track, and as fast as it was, that's when I officially got hooked on diesel. I knew I needed one. I had to buy one. And you'll be able to talk to those guys and see where they're at now, and they're knocking on the 2,500 horsepower door and the 3,000 and everything else. It's just amazing.
Oh yeah, that's like the things that Ryan and Tony are doing currently is going to be a game changer. I know you've been talking about Street Outlaws a lot, and I'm a huge fan of that. Anything racing, I'm a big fan of. And the fact that those guys are getting close to them in the Nova and Tony's new truck, and racing with Comstock and some of those guys up there, it's 10 years ago, like Ron said, 10 years ago, if you'd have said that these cars and trucks would be able to do this with diesel engines, they'd have called you a liar. But here they are. Mini Wheat started you got Keith Slack and Ben Shaddy and then Mini Wheat. Those three trucks. We went to Crossville for the first year up here at the Rocky Mountain Diesel Fest that Michael Dalton puts on. And Michael's new truck is amazing too. Those three trucks that time was just unbelievable. They'd make a pass and people in the stands' jaws were just dropped. They could not believe that these Pro Street two-wheel drive trucks were leaving on the back tires and carrying them for 30 or 40 feet, and running mid-5, somewhere around in there. I mean, years ago, you'd have never seen that. It was sled pulling, dynoing only. That was drag racing, but it wasn't big around here. There was a lot of sled pulling going on here, but those guys have changed a lot of things in the industry.
It's going to be really cool next year to see where things are at. And, the conversation that we had with Tony Rizzi, and he was talking about his goals, and, maybe necessarily didn't think he could hit those times, but he's hit them, and now he's put the level even higher. And he's going to get there, and so is Ryan Milliken, so is those guys are just going to keep pushing. They're all competitive. They all love it. They all breathe it, live it, sleep it, everything. It's really cool to just kind of, sit back and watch them and watch what happens, and it's probably the most exciting time in, I think, diesel that I can remember since I've paid attention to it, is where things are at today and where they're going to be, throughout the rest of the season this year and into 2018.
Yeah, like the Diesel Power magazine, it's amazing how much it's progressed to where we are now. You go back and look at 05, 06, this is unbelievable.
It is, and we're pumped about it. We're excited, and we're lining up a lot of these guys that we can to talk to them and not just figure out necessarily where they're at now, but where they want to take it, what some of their goals are, and just see that progress. Just like with your truck, I want to see where you take it. I want to see what you decide to do with the 6-speed versus the 4-speed, and if you're gonna go to the bigger Charger and that the other truck that's getting a motor build, those are the stories we like to hear, and we like to see that progression and, and the smiles on the face, on the owners' faces when they take them out and race them or have fun with them. So we really appreciate your support. Since we started doing these and the suggestions and listening and everything else. It's really the reason that we do these is, when we started, I didn't necessarily think, people, it's going to carry them through the workday or at night, or get guys that, are driving cross country and they're like, man, we listen to this podcast. Like, I've listened to them on loop. And so it's become bigger than just a conversation. It's like people look forward to them. And so, you've definitely helped us and inspired us to do things like that and just, try to bring great content, great information, and just diesel stuff.
Yeah, thank you very much. I've got so many of my friends that never even heard of a podcast either, and after the first couple come out, I'm like, man, you guys got to listen to this. The app's already on your phone. If you got an iPhone, it's on the phone, And it's guys that you'll never get to talk to, unless you go to their shop and you get to spend 15, 20 minutes with them, because they're all so busy. Like Clint Cannon. I mean, who's going to actually get to talk to Clint Cannon and ask some of those questions that you've asked him? I mean, it's amazing content that you couldn't get without this podcast for sure.
Well, we definitely appreciate that, Chad, and keep us updated on the truck. I want to see where you take it, what you decide to do.
All right, man. I sure will. Thank you.
This episode was made possible by BD Diesel, and we can't thank them enough for their support and all the product information that they give us, the way they help us. And we don't want to leave the 6.7 Power Stroke guys out. And we wanted to tell you about the BD Scorpion Kit, which is the best option out there for a top quality, complete, clean installing kit to take your 6.7 Power Stroke to the next level. And it's now available with all the performance benefits of the BorgWarner SXE Turbo, including quicker spool up, higher flow with a smaller inducer size. Basically, anything you would need to use on the street or strip, this turbo kit does it. Now, BD's exclusive components of the new kit are engineered for performance and reliability gains from stock all the way up to the 525 to 650 horsepower range with fuel delivery upgrades. Now, the kit is designed to fit perfectly together. So you got the turbo kit, and then what you do is you combine it with BD's Venom dual fuel system. And what that does is allows you to push past that 600 horsepower mark. An extra idler increases belt wrap on the CP3 drive pulley, and you got custom tie-ins for fuel supply and return, and there's quick connects that are included. So the Venom kit uses a common Duramax CP3 pump, and it's located right where the secondary alternator would be mounted. So you got the turbo kit, you got the Venom dual fuel system, and now your 6.7 Power Strokes at 525, 650 horsepower. Till next time, guys, keep the shiny side up.